It's supposed to be the flagship hospital for veterans here in the nation's capital.
As an employee, it's the worst place I've ever seen.
But scandal has rocked the massive facility.
Change takes time. Improvement takes time.
3 years after the News 4i team first started reporting on problems, Congress is now holding its own investigation.
It should be the flagship.
Tonight, a News 4i team special, Under Scrutiny, inside the DC VA. Here's investigative reporter Scott McFarland.
A tip from a viewer like you helped launch one of the largest projects the News 4i team has ever undertaken, uncovering problems at the DC VA Medical Center and leading to a congressional hearing.
It shouldn't take an investigative team from News 4 to help us fix the problems.
The head of the medical center answered tough questions from the House Oversight Committee and pledged that fixes are in the works for what you're about to see. Over the next half hour, we're taking you inside our investigation to dissect how the scandal first erupted and what has changed since. Among the tens of thousands of men and women who walked through these doors in the last year,
I was having complications with multiple sclerosis.
Is Edgar Gleason of Prince George's County. What the doctors saw made clear to them they needed to admit you.
Right.
You needed to stay there.
Right.
Last 4th of July, the air conditioning failed inside, and he says the temperature was unbearable. 36 hours later, you're walking out.
Right.
Just one of a series of maintenance problems inside the nation's flagship Veterans Medical Center over the past 3 years. That's according to an ongoing investigation by the News 4i team. We found temperature problems also spoiled thousands of flu shots and ruined supplies in the blood bank. There were also supply shortages, some so severe doctors canceled procedures. One patient even had to be woken from anesthesia because they couldn't find the needed equipment for the procedure. The procedure delays, do you often find those in this quantity at other medical centers?
Not in this quantity.
And problems with sterilizing equipment, all aggravated by a culture of complacency, according to the VA's Inspector General, Mike Missel, who released his own scathing report detailing mismanagement at the medical center in 2017 and 2018.
They had to improvise and take stopgap measures at every step.
There was improvising going on.
There was.
That's not common in VA medical centers.
It shouldn't be.
The agency had missed warning signs from years ago. A 2013 report obtained by the I-Team, written by a contractor hired by the VA to assess the medical center, found shortcomings that needed to be addressed, something we pressed the then VA Secretary David Shulkin about weeks before he resigned. There were warnings about this as far back as 2013. Some of these problems are significant in size, and you were here long before 2017. How is any of this what you call a surprise?
First of all, I think you're exactly right. These are issues like you find throughout much of the VA that are long-standing issues. I was not aware of those issues. I was not aware until Mr. Missel, the Inspector General, actually picked up the phone.
5 different men have headed this troubled facility since 2017. Michael Heimel is on the job now. He took over back in October, and he sat down with the I-Team a few weeks into the job to address the uphill battle he faced.
Every veteran in the community should understand that we take their trust in us very, very seriously.
Michael Heimel knew all eyes were watching him. It just seems tragic. The flagship medical center of the VA is considered among the worst, if not the worst in the nation.
Absolutely, and it shouldn't be that way. What I want is a healthcare system that I am comfortable, that I trust with my care.
When we spoke to him last fall, he admitted fixes would not come quickly.
I've told the staff we've got a 5-year plan, and it will really be a 5-year plan to get the organization to where I want to see it perform.
A scathing audit last March found dozens of deficiencies on the grounds, but an I-Team review shows only a handful of them were corrected before Heimel's arrival. You have air conditioning issues in the summer, you have leaks in the roof, you have concerns about the building itself. How do you fix that?
It takes time, it takes scheduling of projects, and it takes funding.
Heimel says he's trying to hire more employees to address the problems with sterilization and the postponed surgeries that have haunted the medical center for years.
Every single one of them, we take a hard look at where did our process break down so that that case had to be canceled, and what are we going to change in our process today so it doesn't happen tomorrow.
While at the same time keeping current employees motivated.
Our staff's been through an awful lot. They know the IG reports out there, they see pieces in the media, and staff gets beat down over that.
A few months after that interview, the I-Team began hearing from other insiders, including current employees who felt the need to speak out about progress being made. You're a veteran. Do you receive care there?
I do, but I will not get any procedure done there.
Striking words from veterans who know firsthand what it's like inside this hospital, trying to repair its reputation. Why do you stay?
For the vets.
They need you?
I am one, so it's hard.
We're not showing their faces because they're also current employees of the medical center, and they worry about retaliation for speaking out.
We're crying out for help, and we're just not getting the resources that we need.
It's been 1 year since internal VA investigators dropped a bombshell report about this facility, revealing widespread mismanagement, supply shortages, postponed procedures, and wasted money.
This isn't a 1 month, 6 month, 1 year rebuilding. This is 3 to 5 years to really bring this facility back to where it should be.
Heimel spoke with us a second time this spring. He says they've had phenomenal success in reducing hospital-acquired infections and improvements with sterilization of medical equipment, along with fewer canceled or postponed procedures.
We have not had a procedure postponed due to equipment availability really since early December.
There have been procedures that have been postponed or canceled due to supply shortages.
Recently,
yes.
This spring?
Recently, yes.
But employees tell the I-Team there are still postponements due to supply issues and still scrambling.
There are times that people in logistics have to run to other facilities and get a supply that a patient needs.
Do you have enough people helping you?
No, not at all. It's a challenge every day to figure out what to do.
Employees say many of the continued problems stem from chronic staffing shortages and problems in human resources, something noted in the 2018 Inspector General report.
Even my co-workers throughout the hospital are broken.
This civilian employee says some co-workers are now struggling with their own health issues due to the added workload and the weeks of overtime required to pick up the slack.
We know how hard they're working.
Heimel admits there needs to be improvement in HR, a challenge across the entire agency. The DCVA hired 136 new staff in early 2019 and is currently using contractors to fill some gaps. But the employees who spoke out worry management isn't listening enough to those on the front lines.
I feel scared as a patient at this medical facility. As an employee, it's a place that it's the worst place I've ever seen.
At the recent congressional hearing, the director said they have recently eliminated the backlog for prosthetics and created standard operating procedures for the staff. When we come back, devastated families wondering if more could have been done to save their loved ones after visiting America's flagship Veterans Hospital. And an alarming escape. How did a psychiatric patient manage to sneak out of the hospital and get an employee to call him a cab? Stay with us. Welcome back. As you've seen, the DCVA Medical Center has been plagued with problems, mismanagement, staffing shortages, and inventory issues. But the I-Team uncovered other concerns, questions about whether the hospital is properly following up on some of its patients.
Woodrow was a jokester sometimes. He was family-oriented.
The annual family outing at Haynes Point just didn't seem the same, says Loretta Funderburg.
Because he wasn't there.
She says the grief of losing her brother is made worse by how the Navy veteran died, just hours after receiving care at the DCVA Medical Center.
He had 2 appointments that day. The earlier appointment he kept.
When Woodrow Reed didn't return home in May 2017 from the medical center, his family became concerned and called the hospital, but says no one could locate him. The next day, Loretta decided to go look for herself.
And as soon as I turned in, there was his car. My heart was beating. Sometimes you just get this feeling or this sense of something.
She spotted Reed's vehicle parked in a handicap spot in the hospital parking lot. Her brother still inside, but gone. Medical records obtained by the News 4 I-Team showed the cause of death was mixed drug intoxication and ruled accidental.
Why couldn't they find the car? It was right there.
But our News 4 I-Team investigation revealed that's not the only recent death that has troubled workers and veterans inside this major medical center. Willie Davis of Southern Maryland underwent a lung biopsy at the medical center back in 2016. His family says he immediately complained of pain and coughing. Rushed that night to the George Washington University Hospital ER, they say he died hours later. His daughter declined to discuss the case on camera, but says they never heard from the VA after their father's biopsy. Agency sources tell the I-Team the medical center didn't learn about Davis's death until the other hospital sent the VA a bill.
Why are some of these deaths not found first by your medical center?
I can't speak to what happened before I got here. I'm familiar with both of those cases.
Heimel, the medical center director, says hospital procedures are under review and changes will be made if necessary.
If we did something wrong, we've got an obligation to disclose that to the patient and to the family.
And he admits the medical center failed earlier this year.
We've ran this location in the past.
On February 6th, the vet who suffered from opioid addiction enters the emergency room. He asks staff to admit him to the hospital. But after evaluating the man, the medical center teams instead released him and gave him a February 8th follow-up appointment in an outpatient program.
Caller believes that her husband shot himself.
February 12th, the man shot himself inside his Annandale home.
There was some type of breakdown in the process here at the medical center.
Absolutely. That was a veteran that came to us for help, and we failed.
We check federal hospital databases. When it comes to communicating with patients recovering at home, the medical center is below average nationally, but almost exactly average in D.C. A month after that report, a new issue uncovered by the I-Team that impacted not only patients, but the public, when a psychiatric patient at the VA managed to escape. Internal VA records obtained by the I-Team say the 29-year-old man from Manassas escaped the psychiatric ward at the D.C. VA Medical Center after entering the shower in May. By removing the ceiling tiles, removing part of the ceiling ventilation, and crawling to a neighboring office outside the locked space. Here's what happened next, according to a relative.
He went through the emergency room and asked someone in the emergency room, the staff at the hospital, to call a taxi cab.
And they called him a cab?
They called him a cab.
He was wearing his hospital clothes?
He was wearing his scrub bottoms and a tank top.
The relative did not want to be identified because the man is accused of taking that cab ride to a home in Manassas, where police said he held a woman he knew against her will and assaulted her. Prince William County Police arrested him. The hospital told the I-Team it quickly identified the veteran's location and contacted the police. But that relative told us something else. Before getting in the cab, the patient called home to alert family he was out. The relative then called the VA hospital twice to warn them the man had escaped, but said they couldn't even confirm if he was even a patient.
You tried to warn them that he'd escaped?
I did.
And they didn't go look?
No, they didn't even bother walking to check his room.
After that incident, the internal VA record shows staff were retrained on how to better identify escape risk. Also, tamper-resistant fasteners were put on those ceiling tiles, and the facility plans to also install locks on the covers. The patient was hospitalized in Virginia after being charged by police, but he has since been released. Problems not just inside the D.C. VA, but also outside, as veterans struggle to make their appointments with a parking crunch. And later, the secretary of the VA sits down with us to talk improvements and plans for the troubled hospital. We'll be right back. It was a story about the local VA hospital that really stuck with a lot of viewers. Veterans struggling to stand or get around, often forced to walk long distances just to see their doctors. Why? Because of a huge parking problem facing the medical center here in D.C. Getting most places takes just a little longer for Sequoia Pointer these days.
When you have a traumatic situation happen to you, you just don't recover as fast as they think.
3 decades after serving in the U.S. Army, Pointer is fighting another battle. He's recovering from a stroke and still struggles to use his left arm and leg.
You set aside 30 minutes just to find parking?
Just to find parking, yes.
30 minutes?
Yes, at least 30 minutes.
But getting to his appointments recently at the D.C. VA Medical Center has turned into a lesson in patience. We watched him unload his scooter, then make the long trek from the back of the lot just to get inside.
He's going to have to fight through the traffic, then he's going to have to fight for a parking space, and then he's going to have to fight to get in there and go wherever he's going. I've walked those halls with him. They're long.
When we first met Jonathan Warwick, he was trying to navigate over a hill to his car in the VA parking lot.
You just had 2 hips replaced. You have a fractured spine. Did it occur to you, I shouldn't be walking this far to get to my doctor?
In a sense, yes, I shouldn't have to be walking that far.
The News 4 I-Team found patient after patient forced to walk long distances after a long search for a spot. Just how far? We measured from the back row to the front door. More than 3.5 football fields each way. A third of a mile round trip.
Parking lot access is something that we hear about a lot.
Heather Ansley of Paralyzed Veterans of America says this is a growing complaint at VA medical centers.
A parking challenge means some veterans may not even be trying to go.
Exactly.
Internal VA records obtained by the I-Team show they've been aware of this problem, calling it an unacceptable deficiency, and identifying dozens of other parking issues at medical centers nationwide.
There's this big list of needs nationwide. Does that surprise you?
Unfortunately, no.
Some good news in April when the DC VA finally opened a new parking garage next to the hospital. Holds about 400 cars, and there's a shuttle service to carry vets with mobility challenges from their vehicles to the front doors. A message to DC veterans from the head of the agency when this News 4 I-Team special returns. The director of the DC VA Medical Center says there have been positive developments, especially with supply shortages and the sterilization of equipment. The Inspector General of the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, charged with watchdogging this medical center, says a progress report will come in at the end of October of this year. At the very top of the agency, the Secretary of Veterans Affairs says progress is being made at the medical center, and he did so in a recent sit-down interview with the I-Team where he talked about the VA and about this facility.
The good news about DC is that, and you've certainly covered it for the last few years, is that the ratings have gone up. It's now no longer a one-star facility, it's a two-star facility. We have a dedicated women's health clinic. Our mortality rates are as good or better than any in metropolitan Washington, D.C. And that is a huge step forward. We finally put in place permanent leadership. I can't speak to the crises that you reported on in the last few years. I wasn't here. But I can tell you that we are focusing on DC. It should be the flagship, and I do think it has improved greatly.
The permanent director you referenced says this is a fix that will take years, not months. Does that sound acceptable?
Well, I don't know. I didn't see that comment, but I hope it doesn't. And it's my goal across the country to make sure that those things don't happen.
What do you say to the DC veterans?
Well, what I say to the DC veterans is first, thank you for volunteering to serve your country. Come to us. Not only come to us, but tell us what you need. Tell us what you see that is right, and tell us what you see that is wrong. This is not your grandfather's VA anymore. We are changing with the population of veterans.
The News 4 I-Team would also like to hear from you. Many of the stories you've seen come from veterans, from their families, and from employees of the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. If you have something we should be investigating with the VA, there are many ways to reach us. You see the phone number and the email on your screen. You can call us at 202-885-4444 or send us an email at tips@news4iteam.com. That's tips@news4iteam.com. And make sure you visit our NBC Washington app. Simply look for investigations. From our entire News 4 I-Team and all the women and men of NBC4, we thank you for joining us for this special report.